It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
Hey, welcome back to another Real Estate Breakfast, your largest real estate podcast in Australia, as we talk property from Bundaberg to Newcastle and everything in between. And streaming right now and available on multiple platforms, including iHeartRadio. Well, the weekend is back as we chase real estate dreams around Australia. In fact, last night I saw that My Sex was performing in Rozelle in Sydney. Gee, still going after all this time. You might have been at that particular concert. Now, if you're one of the many listeners outside of Australia, for example, you might be in the UK planning to migrate here, or you're a returning Aussie, let us know your real estate story and what you're planning on doing. Because it's a good morning to Tina, who is in Berlin. She's been there for 2 years. You're a returning Aussie back to Perth, you tell us, in a few months' time. You have been listening to us for the last 12 months, educating yourself on property, and this is going to be your first property you're buying in Perth, and you've got enough to buy a house. And you say the exchange rate does help make that possible. So thank you for that, Tina. And a reminder, if you'd like to send us an email with your property journey, you can do that to myrealestatepodcast@gmail.com. And just in terms of context, as a bit of a guide for what other countries are listening to the Real Estate Breakfast, here's a bunch of them. We've got people in the United States, the UK, New Zealand, the UAE, Germany, Canada, Singapore, Hungary, Sweden, Japan, Cambodia, Netherlands, Uganda, Philippines, Iran, South Africa, Ukraine. Just keep on hanging in there, Ukraine. Everybody admires what's happening there with your fight. France, Indonesia, and also Poland and a bunch of others, as we welcome into the Real Estate Breakfast Paul ORiordan. He is the principal at ORiordan Real Estate in the Blue Mountains. Yes, good morning, Paul. Welcome back. People listening to you from all corners of the planet.
Good morning, Craig. Great to be with you. Great to be with the world. And we'll add the Blue Mountains to the list of exotic locations that people are listening in from.
Yeah, it really does surprise me. Actually, one I didn't mention is Uzbekistan. Never been, don't really know too much about it, but a few people are listening to us from Uzbekistan. And yeah, it's just really interesting because it does show up on the heat map where people are listening to us from. But in that number one position is actually America.
There you go. Hello, America.
Yes, good morning, America. Now, while the spotlight has largely been on housing affordability and first home buyer incentives, one group does remain unrepresented in the conversation that we're going to talk about, and that is older Australians. And with an ageing population, many seniors are living in oversized family homes that no longer match their lifestyle or needs. And downsizing could offer them comfort, lower maintenance, and a financial buffer. So, Paul, why is downsizing among older Australians such an issue that deserves more attention from governments and policymakers alike?
Look, there's a lot of talk, as you said, around the housing shortage, and we're not even close to building enough homes that meet the demand. So it's starting to sound a little bit like a broken record. Perhaps the homes are already here, they're just not readily available. So according to the data from the 2021 census, there are 473,000 individuals over the age of 65 living alone in New South Wales. Of these, roughly 60% are living in private households rather than in aged care, public or community housing. So this data suggests that around 280,000 homes could potentially be freed up if older homeowners were given the opportunity and support to downsize.
Gee, you know, that's a big number whichever way you look at it. So, okay, let's look at the most common concerns then older homeowners face when considering selling and moving into something more manageable.
Yeah, look, the biggest hurdle by far for most homeowners is making the emotional decision to accept that their family home is no longer suitable and that a change is necessary. So once that decision is made, some of the other main concerns that pop up are location. This is very important. Staying close to their family and friends is a priority. The thought of relocating to a different area can feel like too much of a change. Housing availability. So finding a home that meets their needs and is age friendly can be very difficult. And this is very true of the Blue Mountains. We have a real shortage of age appropriate housing available up here. The process of physically moving can be daunting. The thought of sorting through, 30 or 40 years of belongings and packing it can feel overwhelming. And especially if they've got health or mobility issues, that can really put pressure on. But by far the biggest concern people I speak with have after they've made the decision to actually move is how to financially make it happen. In most cases, the current property will finance the purchase of the new one. So having a bridging finance in place is a crucial element, which allows them time to find and secure the new property without the need to sell first and risk being homeless or having to move in a temporary accommodation if the right property isn't available at the right time.
Yeah, it's a big issue. We'll have a look at any existing government programs in just a moment. But, one of the key things is that they lose that independence for what they're used to. It's their space that they've been used to for, as you say, in some cases up to 40 years. Nobody really likes to sort of change their environment when they get older, and that sort of just stops them. I know many people that just can't get out of that big house that they're living in, which causes this problem, of course, to free up the larger homes.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
All right, well, let's have a look and see if there is any existing government programs or incentives aimed at encouraging seniors to downsize.
Yeah, look, there are, and as you're going to hear, they're not enough, and I don't think they go far enough to truly encourage downsizing among older Australians. So the Downsizer Super Contribution Scheme, which is a mouthful, introduced in 2018, this scheme allows homeowners aged 55 and over to contribute up to $300,000 from the sale of the home into their superannuation fund without affecting the usual contribution caps. However, this only benefits those who have sufficient equity in their property to do so. And the other is the asset test exemption for pensioners, which is introduced in 2023. And this exemption allows pensioners to retain their pension entitlements for up to 24 months instead of the 12 months it was previously after selling their home, giving them the time to purchase a new property without impacting the benefits. But these are the only current programs available in New South Wales.
Yeah, the problem is, of course, they're large homes, and you've got these younger buyers that are set to create their own families. They need these larger homes. So if we kind of look at it from those two different angles, what new incentives do you think could help free up family-sized homes for the younger buyers and at the same time support seniors through the transition that they just find so very, very difficult to make?
Craig, the process needs to be cheaper and more streamlined. As we know, the sale and purchase of a home involves many moving parts, so introducing a stamp duty exemption would significantly reduce costs for older Australians, making it easier for them to navigate the transition and would help in securing bridging finance. And currently there aren't enough bridging finance options available for older Australians. And I didn't know this till I had a recent sale, particularly for those who are retired and no longer have a regular income. Most major banks don't offer products tailored to this demographic. So when you look at aged care facilities, they allow people to purchase with a smaller deposit, and then they typically give 4, 6 or 12 months for the person to get organised or sell their existing property. So surely policymakers can develop a similar system for seniors who wish to remain independent and just want to downsize, providing them, with the financial flexibility and time they need to make the transition in a cost-effective manner. And that will ultimately free up much needed family homes for the broader market.
Yeah, it's a really big issue, and it's not going to be resolved easily. Let's change tack, Paul, because coming up on Tuesday, can you believe it? It's come around pretty fast, and we're talking about the RBA and what they, in their wisdom, is going to do for mortgage holders. So what do you reckon? 25 basis points or 50 basis points? That seems to be where we're headed.
I noticed you used the word wisdom there. I'm convinced that sometimes they're just in a room throwing darts at a board. You'd have to say it's going to come down, whether it's going to be 50 or 25. Let's all hope for 50. Look, I think you could have $1 each way on that, but at least it's positive and they're coming down.
Yeah, well, let's keep the fingers crossed, as you say, that it is a 50 basis points, because the people in the Blue Mountains are going to be pretty happy. Enjoy your weekend. Thanks for that. That was a really great subject that we've covered off this morning. Enjoy your weekend. Look forward to catching up soon.
Thank you, Craig. You have a great weekend as well.
From the emotion of property, the economic inflation, managing your expectations, lack of stock, price growth, construction appetite, days on the market. Stay informed with us and know your property.
This is interesting. You guys talked about this. Historically, for every 1% rate drop, national dwelling values increased by 6.1%. Tell us more about that.
Sure. So probably worth just looking at how we came up with this analysis as well. We wanted to understand housing market performance in periods of no cash rate change and also when the cash rate was moved lower. So we looked at the CoreLogic Home Value Index nationally, as well as for submarkets across Australia for 3 periods during the 2010s, because that's where we could observe the Home Value Index under about 6 months of a steady cash rate and 6 months following rate reductions. And from that, we found that when the mortgage rate comes down off the back of cash rate reductions, we find that people can access more finance. There's generally more purchases, and it pushes up demand for housing, so it pushes up prices as well. And so that's where we get that 6% increase in national home values for every 1 percentage point cut in the cash rate. Of course, in reality, the RBA doesn't cut the cash rate by 1% at a time. It's more likely to be 15 or 25 basis points when they do eventually make the first move.
Explore new property destinations where you could live with exclusive interviews covering real estate news and market insights.
So let's then go to February the 19th of 2024 and catch up with Rich Harvey in Sydney.
What do you do with all that information? A lot of people throw up their hands and go, oh, it's all just too hard, I'll just keep renting. And we're seeing a lot of trends of people moving interstate. Areas like the Gold Coast, Brisbane, Sunshine Coast is definitely seeing a significant uplift.
And in March of last year, Margaret Lomas was here. She was talking about mortgage rates and shopping around for a better rate.
If you see a bank cut their fixed rates, and you need to look at what terms they're cutting it over. So banks will have fixed rates from 1 to 5 years, and there'll be a different fixed rate depending on the term that you're taking it for. It's a reliable indication that for that period of time, they expect that you will pay more interest to them on that fixed rate than you would if you stayed on variable.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.